Welcome to The Explainer, where we break down complex topics into clear, actionable insights. Let's just dive right in. So today, we're tackling a question that is absolutely critical for millions of families. Can you claim the child tax credit if your child has an ITIN, not a social security number? Now, the answer, you might be surprised, isn't a simple yes or no. And digging into why really shows you how the gears of our tax system actually turn. So here's what we're going to cover. We'll start with the main question, look at the key rules, talk about what other credits might be on the table, a really common application trap, and then, why this whole thing matters in the real world. Okay, let's get right into the most important piece of this puzzle. To really get a handle on child tax credit eligibility, you've got to understand the difference between two 9-digit numbers. It seems small, but this one little distinction, it changes everything. First up is the ITIN, the Individual Taxpayer Identification Number. Its purpose is incredibly specific. It's all about tax administration. Think of it as a tool that lets people who can't get a social security number follow U.S. tax law. File their returns and pay their taxes. Now, it's just as crucial to understand what an ITIN is not. It doesn't give you permission to work, it doesn't change your immigration status, and it won't make you eligible for Social Security benefits. And importantly for taxes, it also doesn't let you claim the Earned Income Tax Credit. It is strictly a tax processing number, and that's it. And that brings us to the core rule. A law passed back in 2017 says that for the tax years 2018 all the way through 2025, a child must have a social security number to qualify for the child tax credit. So if your child has an ITIN, they just aren't eligible for this specific credit during this period, plain and simple. So you might be thinking, okay, if the big child tax credit is off the table, is there just nothing? Well, not exactly. The tax code does offer an alternative, but, and this is a big but, it's a completely different kind of credit. That alternative is called the Credit for Other Dependents, or ODC for short. And as you can see right here, the differences are, well, they're huge. The ODC is worth only $500, a fraction of the CTC's $2,000. But honestly, the most critical difference is that the ODC is non-refundable. That means it can reduce the tax you owe, sure, but only down to zero. It can't ever come back to you as a refund. Okay, so this brings us to a really frustrating part of the process. Because to claim even that smaller ODC, your child needs to have an ITIN. But trying to get one can feel like you're stuck in an impossible loop. And don't just take my word for it. This quote from a Reddit user just nails that feeling of confusion. The IRS says you need to file a tax return to get an ITIN for your dependent. But tax software, well, it needs an ID number for every dependent you list. It feels like you're completely stuck. So how the heck does it work? The trick is, you have to do everything all at once, and you have to do it the old-fashioned way, by mail. You literally prepare your paper tax return and just leave the ITIN number field for your child blank. Then you fill out the ITIN application, that's Form W7, attach all the required proof of identity, and then you mail the whole package together. The IRS is actually set up to handle them at the same time. So really, this form right here, the Form W7, is the key that unlocks that whole catch-22. When the IRS gets this form attached to your tax return, their system is designed to process the ITIN application first, assign the number, and then plug that new number right into your tax return to finish processing it. Now that we've gone through the nuts and bolts, let's pull back for a second. Why does any of this really matter? Well, because this complex system has a huge real-world impact, both financially and socially, for millions of people. And look, we're not talking about a small number of people here. Every year, millions of tax returns are filed using an ITIN. And together, they contribute billions of dollars in tax revenue. These are folks who are fully participating in the tax system. But actually navigating that system, that's a whole other story. It can be incredibly tough. In fact, research from the Taxpayer Advocate Service shows that if you use a professional, They're called a certifying acceptance agent. Your chance of success goes way up. If you don't use one, the rejection rate is more than double. And get this, even if you do everything right and get the ITIN, the problems don't always stop there. Systemic issues can pop up and create huge problems. In a single recent tax year, IRS math error notices related to ITINs wiped out over $6 million in credits that people had claimed, often because of things like mistaken deactivations. It leaves families fighting for a credit they are legally supposed to get.
And the stakes here go way beyond just a single tax return. For many immigrants, having a consistent history of filing tax returns is an absolutely critical piece of the puzzle for their future. It can be used to prove they've been physically present in the country, show a work history, and demonstrate good moral character, which is a key standard in a lot of immigration applications.
So all of this leads to one big, forward-looking question. That rule, the one requiring a social security number for the child tax credit, it's not permanent. It's actually set to expire at the end of 2025. Congress is going to have to make a choice. Either extend the current rule or go back to the way things were before, when kids with ITINs were eligible. And what happens next will decide if a really critical financial support comes back from millions of kids and families that are doing their part and paying their taxes.